What's up? We're here. Today's video is brought to you by Hardcore Cycles. I want to give a huge shout out to the team over at Hardcore Cycles for jumping on board for yet another partnership with FXLR Burgundy. Through them, we had the opportunity to bring you the Legend Suspension Air A Monoshock. That is going to be the Air Ride suspension. That thing was solid, it was sweet. And we are now able to bring you the Russ Wernemont design Monoshock. So if you aren't already, be sure and give them a follow on Instagram, as well as check out their site at hardcorecyclesinc.com. All the links will be in the drop down section below, so be sure and check them out. Now, one thing to make note of, if you are going to be doing a custom length the way we did, we are going 14.5 inches. You are going to need to make some modifications to your frame. Currently, the standard shock that Russ Wernemont design sells in markets for 2018 plus Softails is going to be 13.5. That is the only size that you get because it is an upgrade from the standard length shock of around 12.5 inches. And in order to go taller than 13.5, your swing arm itself tops out at 13.7 inches. Anything past that, it will not descend any further. You have a bump stop that is on the frame that if you put it on a scissor jack and you try to lift it higher than that, it has bottomed out, and then your rear tire is simply just gonna get higher and higher off the lift or off the ground. If you wanna bypass that and go with the taller shock like we're gonna be doing, you're gonna have to make some modification to your frame, i.e. you're gonna have to shave that sucker. But be aware that any modification to your frame may void any Harley warranties that you may have, as well as change the overall performance of how your motorcycle handles. So just be wary of that, but we're trying to dyno our Softail. We're after that fender gap. That currently we're running the OEM FXLR shock with a bunking extension, putting us at around 13.3, 13.4 inches. It's just shy of 13.5. And with the Russ Wernemont standard, 13.5 is a pretty good size for most, but we wanted to go just a little bit taller. We're looking for a little bit more clearance because we also have the front lifted 2 inches. We're running dyno tubes in the front with a set of progressive heavy duty springs. Now you will be needing a small set of tools, not including the tools that are gonna be needed in order to grind your frame. So what we're gonna do is just remove anything that we have zip tied that's gonna be obstructing. This is for our auxiliary lights, so yours will most likely not have it. And what we're trying to do is just clean up our workspace. And then you're also gonna want to remove this plate that sits on top of your monoshock. If you're going to just a 13.5 inch shock, this may not be necessary, but it is gonna make things a whole lot easier when you try to remove or install your shock. And you're just gonna need 2 sets of sockets for this. It's gonna be a Torx 27, which is the same size Torx as it would go for your hand controls. And there's only gonna be 1 screw for that, and then a 7/16 socket for the other 2 bolts. We have our 2-wheel audio harness zip tied to it, so we're just gonna let it sit there out of the way. But if you had nothing, you could just set it off to the side. You could pick up a socket wrench that has this flexible head that will allow you to position it in order to access the pinch bolt. It's just in an awkward spot, and this is a 1/4 inch Allen socket. So we're just gonna go ahead and loosen it. And you can hear extremely small increments I'm turning this pinch bolt at. It's hitting my fender. If this was someone else's bike and not mine, I would have to be a whole lot more careful. But old Ron Burgundy. And then you just want to back it off enough that's going to remove the pressure from the lower shock bolt. The next step is going to be go ahead and loosen both the bottom and the top shock bolts. For the bottom shock bolt, you're going to use a T50 Torx. You could either use a long Torx socket, or you can go ahead and use your standard with an extension in order to gain access to this bolt. This bolt isn't under a heavy torque, but with the breaker bar, it makes it a whole lot easier to loosen it. And then you just continue to back it out. Now we're not going to completely remove it. And then for the top shock bolt, you're gonna use a 3/4 socket. So now that we've loosened both of them, we're gonna continue by removing the lower shock bolt. And then you would remove the shock bolt. There it is. And one of the things that I run into, I'll show you all here momentarily because I did it again, is the spacer that's in the bottom eyelet tends to walk out when you do remove the shock bolt. So if you do find it having some sort of resistance and it's not coming out, don't despair. Just take a look. Look down, look through the hole, and you'll probably see that that spacer has walked out and is now sitting on the wall of where the shock, on the lower shock mount, so it won't allow it to come up freely. One of the things that you can do is just push it back in with a flathead screwdriver, just kind of work it in. or even with whatever socket you just used, you can use the end and lightly tap it with a mallet in. And if there is heavy resistance, what you could try doing is lifting the bike up even more to reduce the amount of load that is on your shock. And now we've loosened the top bolt, remove that, there's the top, and then your shock will come out. And there is your shock. What I was referencing regarding your lower spacer in your shock is going to be this piece that comes out. See how freely it moves in on the bottom eyelet of the shock? That whenever you're removing your lower bolt, see how it kind of wants to walk out? And on the lower mounting position, this will hit a wall at some point where it will stop it from going out any further, and then that's how it will sit in your lower mounting point. So if you're trying to remove your shock and it won't come out and you're stressed, you think it's seized in there, just give it a sec, look inside, you'll probably see this pushed out. So now that we've removed the rear shock, what we're gonna do is lift up the bike, and that way we can just install our shock and good to go. Hot dog. Peekaboo. Look at that. Look at that gap. That's a Dyna gap there. And so in order to take, so that's where we shaved our frame, and it was to prevent any issues or obstructions. That you can still see that we have a little bit of room. If you look near the top, it's going to be around here, that there's just a little bit of clearance left. Any taller and we would have that issue, and that's going to be where you need to shave on your frame. Pretty much what we did is we cut straight down. Perfect timing, we got our shock, buddy. So for custom order shocks, if you order from Russ Wernemont directly, you're gonna get a $100 additional charge for the custom length order. If you order through your drag specialties dealer, your local shop, i.e. Hardcore Cycles, it's gonna be $50. So instead of paying the $900 and change, you will be getting it for $850. 14.5 Monoshock. Heck yeah. So with it comes some literature that you're gonna review. This is for street bobs. This is simply saying that your hose may have a clearance issue with your rear fender. So just, and we'll cross this when we get to it. You get some decals. You get your spanner wrench for your shock. And then you have your literature here, which the main thing that you're gonna wanna do is please read everything. So whenever you do get this, go ahead and read it. Buddy, look at this. So what I'm gonna do is just pick up the plastic. So here we have our shock. Jesus, that just looks massive. So for comparison, here is the 13.5. This is the OEM FXLR shock with a bunking extension. And so what we're gonna do is just measure eyelet to eyelet, pretty much the center of the eyelet to the other. And this is showing it's approximately 13, let's say 13.4, because half is gonna be just beyond the half point. And then now with the Russ Wernemont center of eyelet to eyelet, 14.5. Look at that. Yeah, right on the money, baby. And so you're gonna have your piggyback reservoir mount, and you're gonna assemble to where it pinches together, and you're not gonna wanna over tighten this together. You are gonna have to remove your belt guard to mount your reservoir mount. So you're gonna get the locking nut that comes with your hardware, place it behind the belt guard mount, and all together you're just gonna thread it in there. Once you get your piggyback reservoir, you're gonna want it just snug enough to where the reservoir doesn't slide up and down whenever you are riding. And so the portion with the reservoir is gonna go down first, and that way you can feed the piggyback reservoir and hose by the fender. And you can even slide it into your reservoir mount. And then you're just gonna position the shock while we cut these zip ties that are at the bottom, holding the spacers in. Slide the top bolt in so that way you can hold it. See, now we're running into issues up here. Well, y'all, the shock is in. It's hard to see. We'll get some good photos and videos for the outro, but we have a gap here. Look at this. Look at this. 14.5 inches on a 2019 M8 FXLR lowrider. This is from, I think it's the second tallest. We're just gonna throw that out there. I know Julio is running a 14.75, and we are now at 14.5. We did run into a small bit of an issue. I'm gonna give a huge shout out to Julio, Isaac, Juan, and Oscar for helping me troubleshoot that, because I was getting a little frustrated. Pretty much what happened is we put in the shock as you saw earlier. I think it's only going to be the 14.5 and above. That I think if you get 14, you should be fine. 14.25, you should be fine, but you may have to address the issue that we did. And the more I tried to install the shock, I ended up pulling out to see if there was any contact point. Sure enough, there was. I was able to see 2 marks on the bottom point of the shock of where it was resting in, because since we went so tall, now the angles are kind of getting messed around with. So you may have to do that. All we did was just hit it with the Dremel, rounded out a little bit more of that material, and now we have the Dynagap on the lowrider. And all that's left to do is just remount the shock plate that goes on top, button up with the seat, and you are good to roll. Again, I want to give a huge shout out to Hardcore Cycles for jumping on board to bring y'all another solid video with the custom length shock from Russ Wernemont Design. And to reiterate, if this is something that you're looking to do, if you order from Russ Wernemont directly, it will be an additional $100 custom length order form. Or if you order from Hardcore Cycles directly, just hit them up, whether it be on Instagram or you shoot them an email. Tell them that you're interested in getting a custom length shock and let them know what size shock you're looking to get. If you order through Hardcore Cycles, it will only be $50 additional charge to get the custom length order. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that like button. If you found any value from it, hit that subscribe button. And while you're there, bump on over and hit that bell to be notified of any future videos when they drop, as soon as they drop. And until next time, appreciate y'all. Cheers, ride safe.